Angela Harris, and this is my oral presentation for Drama 70. I've chosen to discuss the 1971 film Walkabout that was directed by Nicholas Roeg. This was the film that we watched, I believe, in week 7. Well, that was a long time ago. But anyways, I decided to talk about the film mainly because I think it's one of the most complex films that we've watched this semester, with the storyline especially, but also the cinematography and the actors or the acting in the film. In thinking about what I was going to say about this film, I came up with the fact that the film really seemed to be more actor-driven, if that makes any sense. Sure, Into the Wild was actor-driven as well, but we knew why Chris was wanting to break away from his past and everyone in it. We had a sense of the storyline in that film. But in Walkabout, there's no real nice and tidy storyline for us to follow as to why this is going on. Even after watching the film in its entirety, there's so many unanswered questions, at least for me. And I think this is why it's one of the better films that we watched this semester. It creates conversations, and I think Roeg forces us to use our critical thinking skills in this one. Now, for most of the film, we see these two children doing their best to survive the elements as best they can. When thrown into the circumstances by their father, the beginning of the film reminds me of the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel, where the father takes the children out into the woods and leaves them there to die. In Walkabout, we see kind of the same thing, where the father is examining some geological surveying reports, and then later he has a gun and he tries to kill his children. Okay, so yes, there were a lot of questions raised in this film. But in the end, they kind of come full circle and are somewhat answered. Anyways, let me get back to the cinematography of the film. I personally think they did an amazing job in filming this. Now, I'm sure that walking around in what seemed to me to be deserted outback of Australia would be torture to many, myself included. But the way this film was shot, it was just too believable for me. With the different animals and reptiles that were filmed, it added a sense of urgency and lets us know that these kids need to find some kind of help or shelter soon, or it's possible they would die out there. By the way, just a side note, I'm not sure if I remember this being mentioned in the class or online anywhere, but the little boy that was in the film, he's the director's son in real life, which I thought was kind of interesting. Now, I personally don't know how in the world that the actors were able to withstand the heat while they were making the film. It looks like it was extremely hot and the elements were just horrific. Now, I get that the entire film crew was out there experiencing this with them, but I'm assuming that they at least had an umbrella or some form of shade to protect them from the heat. Whereas the actors were out in the direct sun, which is just crazy. Now, knowing that the little boy is a director's son, we would like to think that the boy was not purposely put into any kind of danger, let's say heat stroke, just so the director could get the perfect shot for the movie. This is where the acting would definitely comes into play. The little boy especially. When he seemed to pass out and his sister had to carry him, the way he just hung there, completely limp, it was too realistic. Great acting, by the way. His poor little face, it just looked like it was so sunburnt, and it definitely believable that he was on the verge of dying out there. In watching the film, we see the different camera angles that help to create the sense of urgency and extreme heat that these children were experiencing as well. One example of this is when they climb the mountain to be able to see around in search of some sense of direction or where to go. We see the children walking, and then the camera pans out. And what we see next is like a bird's eye view of the children walking along the ridge of the mountain. They seem so small and helpless that the camera then pans around to show us, the viewers, what the children are witnessing for themselves, and we see nothing but desert. Now in this scene, we see the children starting to descend the mountain, and the camera picks up the heat waves that are coming up off of the hot terrain. It shows us, we don't need a thermometer displaying the temperature. We know that it's hot out there. After another example is after the two find the tree and the watering hole, later when they're sleeping, we start to hear a more dramatic music, more like gloom and doom is right around the corner. At the same time, we see snakes in the trees. A wombat, I think it's a wombat, comes out and is right next to the boy's sleeping face. The watering hole dries up. We see dead carcasses, fruit decomposing, and reptiles eating each other. So what sort of message is this giving the viewer? These kids are done for, right? They're gonna die. They actually wake up and notice the water's gone, and I think at that point also they realize that they're in trouble. But just then the dark music stops and they see the shadow up far away of the Aborigines boy off in the distance. And at this point, I don't know about you, but I got the feeling of relief, that these kids would be okay. Now, we see the same sort of pattern, the same things continue throughout the film, where the camera angles and the acting tell us most of the story without ever really telling us point blank what's going on in the film. And again, I think this is what makes the film one of the better films that we've seen this semester. Anyways, that's all I've got. Thanks for watching.